tangent for a second. Do you agree with gay marriage?
Ah, here come the easy ones.
Absolutely.
No, I don't. I'm very, very happy that gay people have the same rights in society as anybody else. I think it's important to treat them with complete respect and listen seriously to what they have to say about their experience. I don't think the church is in a position to bless unions between people of the same sex, because before we could possibly think of doing that, we'd have to sort out why the Bible doesn't seem very keen on it, and why the rest of the Christian tradition isn't very happy about it. And that's, there's a lot of work to do there. So whatever the state decides about gay unions, I think the church has to do a bit more work.
Okay. How can you justify, as the leader and the leader of the church of England, so you've got a big responsibility, how can you justify all the money that is spent on things like church buildings or even a palace in this current time?
Yeah. I don't find it easy always, but one thing I would say about church buildings is, of course, they're not just there for church people. This building is here for the whole city. It's not just something that's used once a week. And if you're going to keep it open, you've got to keep it safe. You've got to spend some money on it. Same thing with, I suppose, bishops' houses and palaces. I live in a flat in Lambeth Palace in London, and Lambeth Palace is a big place, and it's very expensive to heat it in the winter. And all the heating broke down last winter, so I discovered exactly what it was like when you don't do heating. But, again, it's not just somewhere I live with my children and my wife. It's somewhere where every day we have meetings, we have people doing office work, every day something's happening. And often people come to meet each other in Lambeth Palace who wouldn't meet anywhere else. So, yeah, I think something has to be done to keep that going, but you've got to keep it in proportion. And at the end of the day, another of the old Christian saints said, the buildings you really ought to be spending your resources on more than anything are the temples of the Holy Spirit, people.
Animals equal to human beings?
Are animals equal to human beings? Well, I don't know. God probably could answer that, and I'm not sure I could. Animals are very good at some things human beings aren't very good at, and human beings are good at things that animals aren't very good at. Human beings talk and think, and they build relationships, and they paint pictures and they write poems. And on the whole, wombats don't. I'm sure wombats are brilliant at things that human beings can't do. But I wouldn't like to say human beings, wombats, giraffes, and, I don't know, cockroaches all have to compete. There are different sorts of dignity, different sorts of special things about each species. And one of the special things about being human is quite simply, we're made in the image of God. That is, we're made to have the possibility of thinking and loving and deciding and relating to God. So,
why should I, or I suppose any of these guys, or you, be a Christian?
Because being a Christian is the way of getting into a human life that is as wide, as large-minded, as large-hearted, as full of hope, as full of possibility as any human life could be. Being a Christian is living, the extra dimension. Relationship with God through Jesus Christ is opening up all sorts of things for you. It tells you that you don't have to be imprisoned by your guilt. It tells you you've got the possibility of growing up to be more and more like God, more and more able to love and to make a difference. And, that's good news. Major good news.
Where do other religions come into it?
Other religions. I'm very, very grateful for the contact I've had with people of other religions. I learn from them all sorts of things about dedication and devotion, about meditation, about really focusing on God, about obedience to God, tremendous lessons. And I don't want to rule them out and say, it's all rubbish. God forbid. We've got a lot to learn. I still believe, otherwise I wouldn't be a Christian, that because of what Jesus Christ was and said and did, we are actually, in some way, given the biggest perspectives we can have. But that doesn't mean that everybody else knows nothing, and we ought to be able to listen to them.
So listening is the key.
Definitely.
Kind of looking in the opposite direction, instead of outwards, inwards, there are lots of different denominations. I mean, I grew up as a Baptist, rock on, and then I went and worked for a Pentecostal church in East London, and then I came to Devon and worked for a United Reformed Church, and as far as I can tell, they're all Christians, and we believe slightly different things, and now I work with a Christian organisation called Christian Aid, and I come to Night Church, which is an alternative expression. What is going on with all these different denominations? Is it actually diversity, or is it division? Are they good for us?
Diversity is good for us. Division is bad for us. And what's going on is that all through the history of Christian people have found things to disagree about. And they've not been able to disagree with grace or charity. They've wanted to say, okay, I can get along without you. In the last 100 years or so, we've learned more and more that we can't really get along without each other as Christians. We've got to draw closer together. But it still leaves us with a few arguments to be had, a few discussions. And for me, coming from the Christian background I do, I think the best, the most resourceful kind of church is one where you have quite a lot of tradition available, where you have the sacraments, Holy Communion, baptism, really at the heart of things. And, that's what I'd like to see characterising the whole Christian family. But meanwhile, people in traditions other than mine do a lot of the heavy lifting, they do a lot of the hard work. They're manifestly people who love Christ and live in the Holy Spirit. So, again, learning from them.
You picked up on sacraments there and tradition. We live in a modern world, and a lot of us are into music and different expressions of doing church. Where do those traditions and bishops and people who wear dresses and regalia and all these sacraments, where do they fit into the modern world and the modern way of being a Christian?
Well, I don't think there's one modern way of being a Christian. See? I think there are lots of ways. And people who come from my sort of background would say part of being a modern Christian is knowing how to use all the things that Christians in other centuries have discovered and found helpful. So take praying, just to take the obvious example. The way I try to say my prayers and get a minimal bit better at saying my prayers is to think about the way in which Christians have said their prayers over the centuries and ask yet again, what can I learn? And the other thing I'd say about modern Christians is this is also an age in which, as you say, visual things, images, matter a lot. It's not just words. So when I think of the traditional worship of the church, I think, well, here are some very powerful bits of drama and images which can speak, sometimes, to the areas that the words can't get to.